Vision keeping in game development is super important because with a more coherent vision, you can also make a more coherent game. It will be a lot easier to stand out from the rest, and you will also hopefully sell a lot more copies. That's why, in my opinion, every game developer should try to become really good at vision keeping. And this is where I have to admit that I completely failed at that in my current indie game project, Will You Snail. If you wanna see how I failed, why I failed, what went wrong, then check out the video made a couple of weeks ago. This is basically a follow-up video to that. Thanks so much for all of the useful advice you gave me. In this video, I basically want to share my main takeaways that I took from you. My top 8 takeaways for how you can maneuver yourself out of a situation like this. How you can do better vision keeping for your game. And how you can hopefully make a way better game as a result of it. And I'll be demonstrating all of that on my own game, Will You Snail. Let's dive into it. Tip number 1 is try to get clarity about what your game is as early as possible. Or in other words, try to find a vision for your game as early as possible. Pretty much did that for Will You Snail. Will You Snail was supposed to be a funky rage game where you fight an AI. Everything done correctly here? Nice. Tip number 2 is something I've learned from making Islanders, and that is that having visual prototypes as well as gameplay prototypes really helps to define a vision for your game and also to keep a vision for your game. At some point in the development of Islanders, Friedemann made a really cool visual prototype that basically helped the entire team to understand what we are about to make. It helped to eliminate all misunderstandings because it was basically showing how the finished game is going to look like. You could even place a couple of buildings. The game wasn't really working yet, but it was just a little visual mock-up, and that was absolutely fantastic for vision keeping. For Will You Snail, I did not do that. I skipped out on pre-production entirely, which is something you should not do. Diving right into the development of my games without really thinking about what my game is one of my most common mistakes that I keep repeating for some reason, and I regret it every single time. So make some visual prototypes, make some gameplay prototypes. I guarantee you it will help you to get a lot better feeling for what you are creating. Tip number 3 is clearly where I messed up for Will You Snail. You need to notice when your focus shifts into different directions. Yes, it is very normal for the focus to shift during development. Some aspects of your game are a lot more fun than you initially thought they were, so maybe you want to shift the focus to that. You just need to be careful that you don't shift the focus into too many directions. And most importantly, you need to take conscious decisions about that, or you will end up with a completely wishy-washy game that is everything but really nothing. It is okay for your vision to change during development, but you still need a clearly defined vision. And I clearly didn't have that for Will You Snail. I'm happy that at the very least I realized now. In the worst case scenario, I wouldn't have realized till the game was out, and then it would have been too late. So yeah, I mean, at the very least I'm noticing now, but in the best case scenario, whenever you shift your focus during development, you should take very conscious decisions about that and readjust your vision for the game accordingly. So now you might wonder, how do you know you still have a clearly defined vision for the game? Tip number 4, always know what makes your game special and stand out from the rest. This way you know you're still on track, and you guys made me realize that what's special about Will You Snail is not the difficulty, is not the rage game platformer aspect. What really makes Will You Snail special and stand out is the AI, the interactions with the AI, that it places traps in real time, and that back and forth between AI and player. So from now on, that's what will define the vision for the game. That's what will make the game stand out. The AI. Full stop.
Your opening bracket, not closing bracket, making humanity proud XP.
Tip number 5, always know who your game is for, and that is something you can do every now and then during development. Just ask yourself, what is your target audience, who are you making this game for, and as long as you can still answer that question, you're still on track. Will You Snail will be first and foremost for people who are interested in interesting AI antagonists, for people who liked GLaDOS in Portal, for example, and it will also be for people who like fast-paced action platformers. Obviously, we have to consider the gameplay as well. That's another thing you helped me to realize, by the way. Will You Snail is not necessarily about the difficulty, it will be about fast-paced action platforming. That's where the game really shines, that's where it's the most fun, and that's what we'll be focusing on. Tip number 6, always know why people will be eager to play your game, because if people aren't eager to play your game, they probably won't buy it, right? For Will You Snail, I think after answering the first 2 questions, I can say the main appeal will be beating the AI, beating the cocky AI that teases you all the time. Ah, you can't beat me. And then of course the other reason is to have fun with the fast-paced action along the way. And the third reason is hopefully that it will just pique players' curiosity quite a bit. In terms of lore, for example, what is the background of the AI? What does it want? Why is it there? I hope that I can pique players' interest a little bit with that. But we can definitely see the two main things that are crystallizing out of all of these questions are the fast-paced action and the AI. So those two things will define the identity of Will You Snail moving forward. Tip number 7 is evaluate every single design decision you make for the game in the context of the vision you have for the game. Everything should serve your vision. There are no design decisions that stand on their own. For example, in Will You Snail, I've been thinking about, should there be difficulty settings? If yes, how should those difficulty settings look like? How should they be named? I came up with something that I think serves the vision for the game really well, and that is giving the AI full control over the difficulty settings, which means yes, there will be difficulty settings, but the player will not be in control of the difficulty settings. The AI will adjust the difficulty partially depending on your performance, and also partially just to troll you, make it really hard or way too easy. So I think that could be really fun. It will allow everybody to make it through the game. And that is basically the thought process you have to take for every single design decision in your game. For example, the title of the game, Will You Snail, served the vision of a rage game kind of well, yeah. Now that the game is focused on the AI and on fast-paced action platforming, that title really doesn't serve a purpose anymore. And I think we'll have to change the title to something else, like Beat the AI, or another title idea I have is Try Me, Noob. Then another thing, for example, the puzzle sections of the game, they feel kind of out of place now because the game is about fast-paced action platforming. I didn't delete the puzzles, but I put them at the end of each chapter and I will make them a voluntary part of the game, basically. They will probably give you a little bit of extra lore. What I really like about that is if you decide to play the game multiple times, then you can just skip the lore and the puzzles. Both of those are things that you basically just want to do once. And then, for example, another thing that I could re-evaluate is the player character. Does it really need to be a snail? Is there maybe a better character that serves the purpose of the game a little better? Somebody suggested that you play a bug and you have to infiltrate the AI as a bug. I will try to introduce more interactions with the AI, maybe even introduce buttons that allow you to interact with the AI even more. Once you know what your vision is, you should really try to make sure that everything is absolutely laser focused on achieving that vision. And then tip number 8 is something a lot of you wrote under my last video about this topic as well, and I totally agree as well. If you ever get into an identity crisis like this, where you don't really know what your game is, who it is for, what makes your game stand out and all that sort of stuff, then it is more important than ever that you finish your game quickly. Game developers, myself included, have a very high tendency to fix problems in their games by adding more stuff to their games. If you're not careful, can make your identity crisis problem even worse. And another thing is that you should let players play the game as soon as possible, get some actual player reactions if the game works, if the vision for the game works. So what I will do for Will You Snail is I will upload the game this month to Steam. That does not mean that it comes out this month, dear God, no. It will still take quite a while to come out, I assume. I just want to get started uploading actually finished and playable versions to Steam, and I want to start playtesting. If you're interested in playtesting Will You Snail, hit me up on Discord, the link is in the description below. I need some dedicated playtesters. I want you to hold me accountable. I will upload the first playable version to Steam this month, and then my process will be updating the game, making it better piece by piece, so that in the worst case scenario I can release the game at any time, basically.
There is nothing artificial about intelligence. In fact, intelligence is the only thing that might be considered real.